What will you do when you retire? Where will you live and how will you live? Dave Nienaber and Joe Patterson are with me, Patrice Sikora, to talk about planning for the future, the how and the where we might live, where we might end up. Gentlemen, it's good to see you again. Thanks for being here.
Good to be with you, Patrice.
Yep, happy to be here.
All right. So why are we talking about this? Why are we talking about where we're going to live and how?
Yeah, so as clients approach and enter retirement, many of them, right or wrong, which we'll talk about, feel this pressure, this need that they need to downsize. And our experience is often quite different. So downsizing is perfectly reasonable. It makes sense, right? You've lived in your big family house for many years. You don't need all that space anymore. And yeah, what do I do next? Well, it's just me or me and my spouse and significant other, and we want to have less space, less to take care of, right? Very, very, very logical. Um, but in practice, we see many of our clients taking a different path. So downsizing is an option. We see some folks upsizing, right? You complete U-turn in the opposite direction, and we see others right sizing. And really, it's a client by client decision. Many folks come to this conclusion from different backgrounds, from different means. But again, downsizing should not be the default, and it isn't for many folks in this situation.
All right. Well, let's wait, break this down a minute. You said, okay, I get the downsizing, I get the upsizing. Well, what is right sizing? Isn't that really what you want to aim for?
You would think, and through an exploration of goals and circumstances, one of those three buckets tends to work for each of our clients. Almost everyone starts the conversation with the term downsizing, a very significant portion of our clients. So as we think of things to talk about, we think of what is it that our clients are talking about, and that seems to be the word. But as Joe alluded to, the end result is often very different than downsizing. Uh, I think there's some key themes as we look across the clients that we have the opportunity to work with. Most of them start with the question, well, what are people like me doing? And unfortunately, and that's not just downsizing, that's in all aspects of life. And we're social creatures. And I think that's normal for all of us, but it can be really tough to draw parallels from what your friends are doing. But we do start to see some themes develop. Um, you know, there is something ingrained in each of us that thinks, oh, when I get to a certain age, I must say the word downsizing. That seems to be a theme of clients. What's ironic about that, though, is the same people that Joe and I tell to spend more money and travel more and do what they want to do can often be the same ones that bring up the word downsizing. So that's a bit ironic. I think a lot of our clients experience with their parents what they wish would have happened. They wish their parents would have downsized and that they would not have been left with a really big house to clean out and deal with all of the stuff. So it could be a case of, I experienced this with my parents and I'm not going to leave the same situation for my children, which I certainly respect. And there's another group of clients where their house is a very sizable portion of their net worth, and they don't know if they'll always be able to live there and if they need to downsize to reallocate some of those resources to spending versus a big house on the ocean or with a beautiful city view that may be a really sizable portion of their net worth. So those are some of the themes, but I think where it gets more exciting in this conversation are just some of the actual client examples. So Joe, you alluded to the fact that downsizing can also end up being upsizing. What are your thoughts of what have you seen with clients?
Yeah, that's a great point, Dave. We mentioned upsizing, which is what it sounds like, right? Yeah, and I've had several clients recently make this transition, and they are going from a nice house, their family. It's in most cases it's their family house, right? They raise their kids there. They've lived there for many years. They've approached this point of this intersection of, well, what do we do next? And have made the decision to upsize. And truly, it's a larger home. It has a lot of amenities that they want to enjoy for many years. They want their kids and grandkids, current or future, to enjoy. and they want this to be a gathering place. I think that's what we've seen as a big theme is I don't want to make this less enjoyable for my family to be here. I want it to be more enjoyable. And so they've come to this conclusion that, well, this is really the best option for us over the next, call it 10, 20 years or more, depending on the situation. And it is a big change, right? Because, that's counter to what they've been told to think, which is you got to downsize, you got to save money, you got to put those dollars back into your portfolio and generate some income. This is truly the opposite, and it's a big undertaking. I think the age discussion is important here. We don't see clients in our late 70s and early 80s doing this.
That was
These are
going to be my
folks.
question, Joe, just to
Yeah,
jump in. When they do this, do they take into account aging in place? Are they making an upsizing move to a home that would allow them to stay there?
yeah. In most cases, yes. So, I'm thinking of one particular client in my head who, their new home is a ranch setup, and that was
Mhm.
intentional. And as we know, ranches are not cheaper to build; they're more expensive. But this was part of the design, which was want to be here for as long as we can be here, and they make design decisions and living arrangement decisions accordingly.
Yeah, and one of the things I've seen, Joe, is the discussion starts with, well, we're at home and we have all these empty bedrooms that used to be occupied by our children. Now let's build this new place. And a lot of them end up with a lot of empty bedrooms most of the year. But those few weeks when the bedrooms are all used can be some of the best weeks out of the year.
Sure.
And so what we think we're solving for, we kind of just create in this new upsized house. And given your resources, that's perfectly fine. And I enjoy seeing clients enjoy those full homes when they have them. Patrice, to your question about finding that right mix, one of the items that comes to mind are folks that buy into retirement communities
Mm.
while still having a home. And I've seen this with clients. I can think of one in Florida in the Fort Myers area that bought into a community called Shell Point down there. I had the opportunity to visit, and I know exactly why they bought into this community early. It's beautiful. It is not what you think of as your parents or grandparents, nursing home, long-term care type environment. It's very active. It's beautiful. But because of that, it can take multiple years to get into. So the client that I'm thinking of went on the wait list. They knew that they may be paying into this place for 5, 10, 15 years before they actually need it. But that was part of their personal insurance policy to ensure that they had the care they needed. They had everything set up and furnished and ready to go. They also enjoy a very nice home that is close by there in the Florida area that works for today's lifestyle, but they made the decision that they wanted to have both at the same time. And when you think of a 3-year buy-in, most people don't have a 3-year time frame to, life comes at you quicker, and you're going to need that option quicker than you typically think. This particular client had a meticulous plan to leave their Cincinnati home, actually have 2 places in Florida, and I'm optimistic it's going to work really well for them. Joe, have you seen clients with the retirement type community enter the equation sooner than you thought?
Yeah, and the example that comes to mind is a couple who actually bought into one of these kind of continuous care spectrum communities, as they're referred to, which is everything from independent living to full on 24-hour nursing care. They opted into a freestanding unit, right? So this is truly a home, right? They have the whole place. There was a large buy-in on the front end, right? And that money, and a structure that this one follows, it's somewhat common, is it's almost like a down payment that you get back 90% of it when you leave the facility. So for them, what that looks like today is this is a couple that travels a lot, and I'm talking, multiple transatlantic trips every year, in addition to hopping around the U.S. So they're by the way, they're my model for retirement. They're both in their 80s now, and most of our discussions at meetings is me pestering them to tell me where they're going next. So what they really appreciate about this place, because we should caveat this, it's not cheap, right? this is not the most cost-effective way to get the space they have. It's not a big home. It's lovely. It serves their needs. What they commented to me is that we can literally lock the door and leave for 2 weeks and not think about anything. So they're paying for that convenience. And where you see that obviously as you age is we're not thinking about, lawn care. We're not even thinking about paying, somebody to cut the lawn. We're not even thinking about paying the HOA. We paid our buy-in. We pay our monthly fee. We come and go as we please. We can utilize the amenities of this facility. They have food. They have exercise options, classes, workout sessions. They have a gym. They have walking trails. So there's lots of benefits of being there that they can use or not. But for them, really, the value is in, hey, we don't have to think about this. It's our own place. We know, if and when we need this level of increased care, we're not going to have to move, right? So it's an alternative path to aging in place, which can be really appealing, acknowledging that it's not the most cost-effective option.
But I think you mentioned earlier, it's peace of mind.
Yes.
You have the peace of mind. You can go travel if you want, but you know that in the coming years, when you probably will need medical care, it's there for you.
Yeah. And so Dave and I just kind of laid out two different approaches to peace of mind, right?
Right.
And what works for one doesn't work for the other. And I think that's the biggest takeaway of this all is folks come into this with this idea that this is what we have to do, when really there's this broad spectrum of different paths that they can take.
Well, but talk to me about finding the place that's right for you.
Yeah, one of the common paths I've seen with clients is spending a year or two or even more traveling to different places, trying to get a feel for what the community is like. And in that process, renting homes just to find the right fit. Had several clients that have visited a lot of different cities in Florida. The appeal of no income tax and sunny weather and all the things that have caused so many people to move to Florida in the last few years are appealing to a lot of people. Some folks find that right spot. They find that right community. I've seen others come back and say, okay, we've tried a lot of cities and it's just not for us. For
Right.
some people that takes one visit, for other people it takes more. So the appeal of renting and try before you buy, I think, is very attractive. Joe, have you seen that with your clients?
Yeah. A couple specifically I'm thinking of is, took that advice to heart, try before you buy. Specifically this couple lived in the Dallas-Fort Worth area for about a year. This was an area that should have been a great spot for them. At least they thought. They had family connections and friend connections, a lot of the things that would signify success. And I think not even 6-7 months in there, they said, this is not it. So I felt good about that because they were ready to buy they were looking at homes, but they hadn't bought anything yet. And turned out they lived in a totally different area, than they were thinking they would. Unsurprisingly, it happened to be in the city where 2 of their 3 kids are, and they had direct flights to the third. So back to Dave's point about family, that is often rightfully driving these decisions. And, even though they thought option A was the best, it turned out it wasn't.
And the rental thing really fits in well when you're attempting to be close to family. We've seen a lot of clients move to where their children and grandchildren are, but their careers can quickly change, and what works for today may quickly change for tomorrow. And that renting gives the clients the flexibility to move as circumstances change. I think in this whole discussion about downsizing, even those that do downsize, I typically see it still ends up costing more. You sell the 2-story, 4-bedroom house that most people have raising a family, and you want to buy the ranch style home. And guess what? There are a lot of buyers out there for that same home. So whether it's buying an existing home or building a home, the construction costs are so high. You may reduce your square footage, but the likelihood of reducing your actual cost seldom occurs. And on top of that,
Dave, you just really accurately defined rightsizing, right? So it's downsizing. There's a thought that it costs less money, right? But it doesn't usually. But there is some value, right? Because they did, in your example, get a little more tidy, manageable place, right? So they've accomplished some of the targets that downsizing, comes with, but this idea that, well, I've got a house and now I'm going to buy another house and it costs half of what my big house costs, that is less likely to occur.
Especially when you add in the HOA fees that so many new homes come with. The expenses add up very quickly. I can't believe some of the fees that I see from clients.
But again, you're getting something for those fees, right? So
Absolutely.
kind of quid pro quo.
Yeah, even though they're high, they end up being very appealing because of the services and the amenities that are included.
So where does someone start with they're thinking retirement, they're trying to be proactive with what they're going to do and not be caught unawares or wait to the last minute? What should they do?
This is often our default answer, but we ask questions, right? So what are your goals? You don't need to move to get rid of stuff. That's often a goal, right? You want to get rid of clutter. So moving forces you to do that. But you don't have to do that, right? You can hire, there's lots of good people who will do that for you. And our clients have utilized those services and they can afford to pay it. And those services will handhold as much or as little as you need. So that's one goal we hear a lot. I want to declutter. You fill the space you have no matter how much space you have, right?
Oh, that's
That
so
just
true.
seems,
So
it just seems to happen. So do you want to move out of your current location? So my clients I was just talking about, they were in Cincinnati. Their kids had all scattered, so they kind of knew they wanted to move south. They were from the South. That's a decision point that often pushes people to make a change. I want to be closer to family. I want to be closer to friends. As Dave said, I want that, year-round warmth. We'll go to Florida, I go to Arizona. So those things should be the initial drivers of this discussion. Like, well, why am I thinking about making this change?
I agree, Joe. I think it all starts with the goals, and they're varied as we see amongst our clients. I think there's some very specific details to consider as well. One that I'm finding is changing rapidly is insurability. And it's obvious for places like California, given the headlines that we've seen. And it extends past that. A lot of places in Colorado, for example, which is a very popular spot for our clients and their families to move to, have significant insurability issues. So I think it's really important as you define what geographic location is ideal and you're looking at homes that you consider the insurability before even making an offer. That hasn't always been the case. A lot of people would make offers and buy homes and then figure out the insurance after the fact. So the places that are most popular come with fires and hurricanes and all kinds of insurance risk. So it's a small detail, but one that I think has changed significantly in the last 5 years about when in the process do you review that. I don't want to shortchange the amount of effort and work that goes into a move, whether an upsize, a downsize, or right size, whatever it may be. There's significant planning, organizing, delegating. Each client is going to do it a little bit differently. You need time to prepare. Deadlines are good. They're healthy. They motivate us. They help us get rid of clutter in a short order if we have to. But I think the most thoughtful moves come with a project timeline on what has to happen. What are we going to give away? What are we going to move? What are we going to send to our children's homes? And that process is different for each couple. And typically each couple, there's a spender and a saver, and there's also one that loves stuff and one that's ready to give it all away. So of course, that's a challenge when moving as well. One client shared with me their task list, and I thought it was really interesting. Of course, a highly motivated, well-organized client. And when you break it down, there was over 100 tasks on his list to move from Cincinnati to Florida. And
Actually, that seems small when you come right down to it.
yeah, just a change of address alone in his list, that was one item with 30 sub bullets on what had to change with addresses. So that alone is going to be a significant burden. And then you have to break things down. What is going to go away. The utilities and obvious things like that with the current home. What are you transferring with you, and what's going to be new when you get down there? So some sort of organized list. I think my client may publish his and offer it to others, which may be helpful, but I just don't want to undersell the effort. And that often can be why people don't make a change, because it is a big lift.
And how about telling the kids?
Yeah, that's something that can get overlooked in this process, and it's both a communication issue and a goals question, right? Um, because I think a lot of our clients have in their minds, this is going to be a generational asset, right? I've got kids, I'm going to keep the house in the family, especially if it's in a, you know, location that's nice to visit, particularly this time of year, right? When it's cold and gray up in our regions. But is that a goal that is just mom and dad and the kids don't really think the same way? It doesn't always, I want to say doesn't always, it rarely works as kind of our clients envision, right? This is like this gathering place. They have wonderful memories there. Why wouldn't this continue to the next generation? Just feels blunt, but the kids visit because everything's paid for and taken care of, right? And
Mm.
especially when, our clients' children are at that age when they're having kids, right? And their kids are young and they're going to Florida to go to the beach, right? That's great. You go to mom and dad's place, got all the stuff we need there. We keep all the kids, beach supplies in stock at the condo. It's highly appealing. Is it highly appealing when, multiple kids inherit this asset in the future and they got to sort out who pays for what and who gets the best weeks, right? Who's getting,
Mm.
prime times at the condo? More often than not, and our attorney colleagues would echo this. They get discomfort when they see big, vacation homes being written into estate plans as we want this to stay in the family. It's, if it's one kid, well, they can do what they want. If it's two, you got a reasonable chance they'll agree. Get to 3 kids, 4 kids, odds are one of them maybe doesn't feel the same way as the other children do. So I think that's something that is worth first a discussion between, clients and with the Foster Motley team, but then with the family, just communicating, hey, this is how we feel about this place, but do you guys, do you feel the same way? And if they do, then I think level 2 is, okay, here's all the things we do every year. We make sure that things are closed and opened timely. We pay this HOA fee. By the way, that's gone up 50% in the last 4 years because, the cost of everything down here has gone up. Here's our insurance bill. That's gone up and it doesn't even cover everything. So I think just this open communication of, okay, you guys enjoy visiting here and we enjoy having you here, but here's what it really looks like. And does this make sense? You can get to even next level planning, such as, hey, we're creating a trust that's just to fund this house. And we have clients,
Oh.
Dave and I both, who have done that. They create a trust that's funded by mom and dad, and it's there solely to pay for upkeep, to the extent that this place continues. So again, that's multi levels ahead of, should we move, right? And do we want to move? But it's something worth thinking about because, again, a lot of our clients do have in mind that they really view this as a legacy family asset to continue, and legacy property assets are a different beast than dollars.
True.
Joe, I think you did a great job of capturing that. We could have an entire separate podcast or multiple on that topic alone. I've had the fortune of living that with my parents' place in northern Michigan. It's been a tremendous family gathering spot, but we've also sat on the dock and had a candid conversation that this has been a blessing for our family, but don't feel the burden of planning for the next generation. Take care of yourself, how it fits into your situation. Because as we go on college tours and look towards the future, we see schedules that don't get any easier. And while the family's been able to enjoy that time together, it will change. And the plans for any house need to be flexible as well. So I thought you did a great job of capturing that. Let's wrap this up. Challenges that you see in this process, or What's top of mind for you, Joe?
I think continuing on that vein that we just discussed, uh, is emotional attachment, right? That's woven through this decision of, is this a family asset or how does the family feel? Um, if you lived in your current home for decades, it's hard to leave, right? So yeah, while in my mind I want to leave, it's hard to execute, right? Not just all the things that Dave was talking about in this 100-item list, but this is a place we raised our kids. Many of our clients have lived in their homes 20, 30, 40 years. So that we see as a challenge. You know, if you upsize, you introduce some new challenges, right? Because it's more to do. Yeah, you can outsource that, but particularly in the examples of our clients who just move to or build a new, bigger, beautiful home, you still got to manage the property. You got to get the landscapers there. You got to make sure things are clean, pools open and closed and, all those things. You often create a list that's longer. An outsourcing list is still a list of things to do, right? Even if you're not doing it yourself. And then I think, Dave and I were chatting about this earlier, but making friends.
Yes.
So I think that is an understated challenge. If you're moving to a new place and you're retired, it's hard to make friends, right? It's hard to make friends at any age. It doesn't get easier as you get older, right? That's pretty well founded. The older you get, the harder it is to make new friends. So, obviously the community you move to is potentially additive to that. And if this place that gives you opportunities to meet new folks. But particularly for people moving to a new location that they haven't, they maybe have visited there and vacation there and decided they want to be there. But that can be a challenging hurdle. And what else have you seen there in that challenge space, Dave?
I just had this idea. I've not talked to clients about this before, but I think before you move, it would be good to track your schedule, what you do, who you interact with, and just acknowledge to yourself that this is going to change. The church that you go to, the clubs that you belong to, the friends that you go out to dinner with. And I don't think I've had a client do that, but if I were to move, I would recommend that to anyone. Write it down and say, am I okay trying to recreate this in a new space? Because I think the relationship side of this is one of the biggest hurdles and one of the biggest struggles when someone does move.
Well, gentlemen, you've brought up so many great points here. I'm sure people are starting to think, I hope they are starting to think about their own situation. How can they reach you to bounce ideas off of you?
Yeah, I mean, downsizing is, often discussed. I think the takeaway today is there are many different paths. Almost none of those typically involve spending less money, right? So that's key. It's one piece of the plan, right? So, the team here is ready to help make an informed decision within the scope of your goals and your overall financial plan.
So if you want to find us for more, you can reach out via our website, which is fosterandmotley.com. Or for those who still use a phone, you can give us a call at 513-561-6640.
Phones never go away, Dave. Never, never. All right, folks. If you've got questions, talk to the folks at Foster and Motley. You are planning your retirement. Make sure you get the right advice. And follow this podcast about life and wealth, and of course, share it with others. Thanks for being with us.